Hi everyone, today we're going to be making a simple high-score system using Playmaker and Unity. I'm on Unity 2017.1, but this should work as far back as Unity 4.6 or for any version beyond 2017.1. So I'll just give you a quick peek of what we're going to make here by hitting play. And I'm going to click reset, and what we're going to do is just roll the dice, and it's going to give us a score and show us the high score. So you can see we rolled 20, but it's not the high score. And the magic of this is that we rolled 100. If we stop playing and play our game again, we automatically load up our high score. We can also click reset and say we have 84 as a high score. And there our high score is loaded. So what we're doing is rolling a score, comparing it to the high score, and if it is in fact higher, then we're going to save it. And where we're saving it is the PlayerPrefs. So PlayerPrefs is sort of what it sounds like for Unity. It's somewhere you can save data, and of course, just from the name, it sounds like it's saving player preferences, and it's a good place to do that. Now we can save other data there other than just player preferences, such as the high score. And we don't want to save too much data there, but we can save a reasonable amount, especially when it just comes to simple strings or ints and floats that are not too many. So that's what we're doing. And this data will persist between gameplay sessions, so it's great for a very simple high score system. So I'm going to recreate this from scratch, and let's do that together step by step. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a new scene. So I'll just go File, New Scene to get myself a new scene. After that, we need to create some kind of GUI, or we're going to use the uGUI for the information to be displayed on screen. So to do that, we can just right-click, choose UI, and I'm actually just going to make a button. And as you can see, the button will be created on the screen and a canvas will be added automatically. So I'm just going to grab this button, position it where I want it to be, and open it up farther in the hierarchy and give it a name. Open up the inspector. Right now it's called button. I'm just going to call it roll dice. And we can just size this up a bit. And let's give our button a name. The next thing I want to do is add a place for my score and then my high score. So we'll go back to the canvas, choose UI, and just add some text. The text is going to be 0. And we'll put this in the middle. Again, we'll just scale this up. And that should be good for me. Call this score. We'll make another text here. We'll call this high score. Let's make this a bit bigger. And then we're going to duplicate this one and just move it over so it's in line. And now we have a 0 here. So that's good. I also think I just want to add a simple background color to this. I'm just going to go to Canvas, UI, and choose Image. We're going to move the image all the way up to the top of the hierarchy within the canvas itself. Then if we just click here on the rect transform, hold down our Alt key and hit the bottom corner here, it's going to resize it to be full size of our canvas. And we could change the color if we wanted to. I'll just leave mine white. Okay, while we're at it, let's make our reset as well. So we'll just grab roll dice, duplicate this one, call it reset. We will open up and rename the text here. We'll also call this, change the text to reset. We can make it a bit smaller. And we'll just grab the box itself, resize it, and move it over. So that works for me. It's pretty much in the middle. So why don't we save this? I'm going to save the scene as called Highscore. And then hit play just to see how it works. So as we can see, if we hit the buttons, nothing happens yet. So we need to set that up using Playmaker. And to do that, we're going to need the uGUI package for Playmaker. And to get that, you're just going to go Playmaker, Add-ons, Download Add-ons. It's going to open up a new window for you here. And you want to go to the Unity UI. In the packages, you want to download the package for uGUI proxy with full set of actions. Download it to your computer and open it up. And I have already done that. And if that's done, you're going to find them here in your actions. And if I can find it where they are, okay, they're right here called uGUI, and it's going to have everything we need to work with the uGUI in Unity. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is generate a number here when we click roll dice. So to do that, we're going to click roll dice, the button, go back to our inspector, and we're going to add a component to this, and it's called uGUI component right here, Playmaker uGUI component proxy. So just remember this one because you're probably going to be using it a bunch of times. So as we can see, it's got a big orange warning saying this event is not implemented on target. So when we click this button, it's still not going to do anything. Actually, we don't even have any Playmaker FSM on this yet. So we'll just go to add another component and say FSM. And we can add a Playmaker FSM and click edit. And now we have an FSM as indicated by the hierarchy here on this game object. So I'm going to go to events and create a simple event for this, and I'm going to call it roll dice. Now make sure you check off this to be a global event so that it can be accessed by this button. And I will make a new state, and I'm going to give it a global transition that I just created called roll dice. And we can name this state whatever we want. I'm just going to call mine roll dice to keep things consistent. Now this start state we're not going to be using right now, so I'm just going to call it do nothing. You can call this whatever you want, it really doesn't matter. But do nothing just helps remember that it's not doing anything. So now we've created this global event called roll dice. We want this Playmaker uGUI component proxy to send the click of this button to our event here. So when we click the button, an event happens on our FSM. So there is a built-in event, but I'm going to edit it and just rename it, and make sure you rename it exactly as your global event, roll dice. And you can see that the orange warning has disappeared because it recognizes that this is being used on the FSM. So let's hit play and see. And now when we hit roll dice, you can see that this FSM event gets fired. So when we roll dice, we want to generate some kind of a random number. So if we go back to actions and we just type random, we can see that there is a random integer. Mine's under recent because I've used it recently, but you're going to find yours down here. So let's double click this, and I'm going to say, sure, I want 0 to 100, and we're going to store the results in a variable called current dice. I'm going to call it current roll, and hit enter. So let's include 100. So if we don't click this, it's going to be 0 to 99. I want it to be 0 to 100. So don't forget to save, file save, hit play, and click this, and we can see that numbers are being generated down here. Make sure you check off debug if you can't see this number being generated. So the next step is we want it to actually show up on the screen somewhere. So to do that, we're going to need another action. And we want some kind of a uGUI action. So I'm going to type uGUI. And let's see here. We want to set the text. So let's say uGUI set text. Okay, that narrows down our options here quite a bit. So we have uGUI text set text. So that sounds right. Okay, so what text we want to set? It's this one here called score. So we need to say use a specific game object, grab score, and drop it in. Now we want to use a variable. We don't want to hard code in the text. But lo and behold, our variable is not here. Why is that? Well, uGUI can only use string type variables, and this is a int variable. So let's ask Playmaker what it can do for us. Let's say we want an int to a string, and here we have it. Convert int to string. How handy. So our int variable is current role, and I'm going to make a new variable and say this, and I'm going to call mine current role underscore string. And it looks kind of goofy here, but if you click on it, it formats itself like this. So if you have a space, underscore, and whatever you want, it will format like this. So therefore I know this is a string just by looking at it. As for the format, it doesn't matter for this. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So the text is current role string. Don't forget to save. Oopsie. And hit play. Let's roll the dice. And there we go. Awesome. Now we already have our score being displayed. But this doesn't really help us with our high score. So we want to do something with our high score. So let's save it to the PlayerPrefs and then load it from the PlayerPrefs as our high score. So let's check our actions and see what we have for this. And we'll go down and look for PlayerPrefs right here. And for the PlayerPrefs, we can only get and set certain variables. We cannot get and set, unfortunately, arrays or hash tables or any other kind of tables. We can only use floats, ints, and strings. So it's a little bit limited, but it is what it is, and so we'll work around that. And so what we want to do is let's save it as a int. So why don't we make a new FSM for this? So we'll say finished, or sorry, a new state. And we'll call this state save pref. We're going to save our prefs. And what we want to do is set an int. And how many ints do we want to save? We're just going to save one. So we could save like a bunch of different ones at one time. But let's just do one. And the value that we want to save is the current role. And now we have something called key. And the key just helps us to remember, or helps PlayerPref to remember the value that we saved. For example, we could say apples, and we have 6 apples. We have oranges, and we have 5 oranges, or maybe gold, we have 55 gold, or maybe you have your sound. It could be from 1 to 10, it could be 3, 5, 6, 8. So this will help us to pull out the data. So think of it like when you save your game under a file name. This is sort of like the file name, so you want to pull it back based on that. So I'm just going to call mine score. So we saved the preferences, and let's say when this is finished, let's load the preferences. So this is actually a get. So we want to get an int, and the int that we want, what's the key? So the key is score. And we're gonna save this as a new variable called, what should we call this? Pref. So we'll maybe call it current pref score. So we'll call this get pref. And then what we want to do is actually make sure that we're displaying this preference here in the high score. Otherwise, it's just going to show up in our FSM, which is of not any help to the player. So just like before, why don't we go back to our recents and then choose, we need to convert this into a string again. So the int variable is the current pref score, and we're going to have to make a new string called current pref score, and I'm going to call mine string. I'm not going to worry about the formatting. And then again, I want to set some uGUI text. So I'm just grabbing from the recent section up here, and you can see I've already used them a bunch of times. So specify the game object. Let's check to see which one. Okay, so I think it's this Highscore 1. So we'll grab and drag and drop that in. And what's the text we want to set is the current pref score. So like always, I like to save my scenes, push play. and roll that dice. Okay, unfortunately, of course, now that our high score is only coming out as the current score, and that's not exactly what we want. So what we want to do is get the score from the preference and see if it's higher or lower than the current score, right? If the preference is higher, then we don't want to change it. It's already the high score. Of course, if the preference is lower, then we want to set the current score as the new high score. So before we do that, let's just grab these two, save preference and get preference. We want to move them down because we don't want to necessarily save until we know what's going on. So I'm going to change this to green just to indicate this is done. It's finished. We're all good with how this is. Okay, before we save anything, first we should check to see if anything exists, because if it's the current high score is 0, then we should save it for sure, or if there's no value, because we need to check if there is any value. So why don't we go down, check our PlayerPref actions, and we have one called has key. Okay, so we can actually just grab and drag this on the screen. And look at that, it just makes an action for us. So the key we want to check is called score. And we're going to make 2 events for it. We're just going to have a true event, and that will make it for us. And we're going to have a false event. So when the dice rolls after, we want to check to see if there is a key in the PlayerPrefs called score. So true, it has it. We want to get it and compare. False means there's nothing been generated. We want to save the PlayerPref, then get it, and then display it. So these are now finished. Why don't we change this to green just so we know. And again, I'm going to save and give it a quick test. And it is saying there is already a preference there, but it's not appearing. So that sucks. What are we going to do? Well, when it starts up, we want it to check to see if there is a preference, right? So we can actually just grab this, copy, paste. Instead of doing nothing at the beginning, we want to check to see if there's anything going on. So let's just change this to the start state. And we can delete this do nothing. So now when it starts up, if there is no data, then we can just say do nothing, it's empty. If it has data, then we want to get that preference and display it. And look, we've already created an action for this. So we're just going to copy and paste it, add it there. I guess we should maybe call this get pref and display. I guess that's more accurate. Get pref and display. We'll have to call it 2 as we can't have 2 actions with the same name. Save this. Hit play. Uh-oh, we have this the opposite. And this is why I always test everything. False goes here. True goes here. And there is a score, and so it's going to load this up. We decided that the PlayerPrefs, in fact, has a key already. So what we want to do is get, a value. We want to get that value and compare it to the current value to see which one's the higher score. So let's go to our actions, and we just say compare. So we have one here called int compare. We want to compare 2 integers. So the first integer we want to compare is the current roll. And we're going to need to get the player preferences before we can compare them. So we can do this in the same state, actually. So we'll call this get int, and we're going to use this PlayerPref get int. We're going to move it up here. So we do this first. We want to get the score. We'll call this the current pref score is fine. And current pref score. So we're going to have the possibility that they're equal, the possibility that they are less than, and a possibility that it is greater than. Okay, and I always mix up which is which, so which one should go on the top and which one should go on the bottom. So let's just try and then see from there. So I'll call this compare. So if it is, I think, equal to the score or less than the score, let's try this. We're just going to do nothing. We don't want to save any data. So if it is greater than the score, we want to save the preference and then get it and display it. So we can just copy these again. Copy, paste, and go here. So let's make sure we're saving the right thing, which is the current role. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, that looks right. So again, save your scene, push play. Let's hopefully this is not the opposite way. And there we go. So now our current high score is being saved and displayed. And if I stop it and start it again, you can see that the data has been saved. Now we want to be able to reset this, right? Especially for sort of debug purposes. And this is super simple. We can do this just the same way. We've got this reset button. We're going to go to the inspector, add another component, and again, remember this is called the uGUI proxy component. I know it's a big name. We want to create our own event. I'm just going to call mine reset. I'm also going to add a FSM, and let's edit this FSM. So when we start, we're going to do nothing. We'll add our own state called reset. And we're going to need an event, which we'll also call reset. And it's set to global. And let's just add it here. And we can see our orange warning has gone away. That's a good sign. Now to reset it, we're going to go to actions. And let's check our PlayerPref actions. Where are you here? PlayerPrefs. And we have one called PlayerPref delete key. So we want to delete the score key. And not only do we want to delete the score, we want to set this high score to become 0 again. So in the actions, let's go to uGUI set text. And you should be able to find it by now as we've used it 4 times. We're going to specify a game object, which is this high score 1. We'll drag it in, and I'm actually going to just hard code in 0 there. And let's reset it, and that looks good. Roll our dice, reset, roll, and we're already getting hundreds. It's a lucky day. Perfect. So again, save when you're done. And this is just a simple, easy way to save your high score into PlayerPrefs. In the next tutorial following this, we're going to look at adding in an array of high scores, because you don't maybe just want to save one high score, but you want maybe a sort of scoreboard type idea where you want, 100, 99, 40, 43, and then in descending order. So let's look at that in the next tutorial, but hopefully this should get you started and understanding how PlayerPrefs work better.